Hi there, my name's Adrian and welcome to Hyundai Power Equipment. Today we're going to examine the HYBC5200 brush cutter. Okay, let's examine the contents of your box then, shall we? I've laid everything out on the table here so you can see exactly what you get. First of all, you've got the head unit. It's got the right-handed trigger. There's a little bit of assembly needed here. That's the right-handed trigger. And this is the operator's sort of user bar, which will be fitted here. We'll go through that later, the assembly. Next we have the tool kit. Now there's various tools in here, Allen keys and screwdrivers and things, but also are all the nuts and bolts and screws and things you're going to need for the assembly. The guard for the strimmer head. This is the lower part of your shaft, which will be assembled down at the other end there to make the two-part shaft. A little bit of assembly again, we'll go through that later. Here's the bump stop strimming head with some cable in it and some spare cable, or trimming wire we should call it. Next we have the 3-tooth brush cutter blade, and this unit also comes with an 8-tooth brush cutter blade as well, so you've got both choices. Next we have a comprehensive user's manual. All the information you're going to need is in here, you know how to assemble and all the rest of it, and there are some useful tips and hints and some safety information, so make sure you read the manual. Next we have a warranty registration form. You can fill this in and post it back to us, so I think all the details are on there where you can do it online as well to register your warranty. Here we have a Morris Lubricants lubrication chart, and it shows you what two-stroke oils and what have you we recommend for lubricating your unit. Next we have the user's harness, which you can strap on over your shoulders, and it'll carry the weight of your tool sort of over your shoulders. Next, a pair of gardening gloves, then a face shield, which is quite important. A little bit of assembly needed there, I shall show you that later. Some ear defenders, fairly obvious, and your two-stroke oil mixing bottle. This is very useful because it gives you the graduations for the correct mixtures of the two-stroke, which we'll go through that a little later as well. And that's the contents of your box. So the first thing we do on assembly of the head unit is to assemble the handle and the trigger mechanism. Now, this is the user's handle, and you'll see that it's got a plastic handle already fitted one end, and the trigger mechanism goes on the other, and it will be in your right hand. So if you imagine this being here, in this position here, it's got a flat section here which is going to clamp there. We shall do that in a minute, but the first job is to fit the trigger mechanism, your throttle mechanism, onto this handle which has nothing on it. You'll see on this handle there is a hole right through the shaft, and there's a corresponding pin inside the trigger handle. That pin, first of all, which screws on, we can go to our tool packet, and there's a screw already fitted. So we'll undo this screw, remove it. What we're looking to do is to line up that screw hole, where the screw will go right through, with the hole in the shaft. So what we're looking to do is just to fit the shaft up into the hole. Now, as you can imagine, it's going to sit here on the machine. So this could go either way round. The way round you want it is with the on-off switch facing yourself and the cable coming your side of the front handle. So that's the orientation I want to put the screw. So, having got it in the right orientation, from the outside we can then fit the screw back in. It passes through the hole in the shaft, and with the screwdriver, simply lock the screw back into place. And that's the trigger mechanism fitted to the handle. So there, as we can see, as it's going to go on the machine, the on-off switch is facing me. This is the trigger lock facing me, and the throttle is facing away. And that's the correct way round, as opposed to being on the handle with the cable coming at the back. This is the correct way. Okay. Next job is to remove this little clamp plate here. And as you can see, the shaft of the handle will actually be clamped in the hole that runs through this clamp plate. Right, what you need is the larger of the two Allen keys, or the 5mm, and undo all of the 4 bolts on the top. It's not hugely technical, you just undo the 4 bolts, place the bar in position, clamp back on the top, and then tighten up the 4 screws. Now this handle's got quite a wide flat part, and as you can see, the clamp can go in. There's a bit of variation as to where it can go, an inch or so. Probably start out in the middle, but you can alter it to suit yourself at a later date. So there we are. That goes on there. Just hold it in place lightly. Put the 4 screws back in the holes. Let's just get all 4 started first. 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's not to worry. Put it roughly in position where you're going to want it. Just loosely clamp them down. And tighten up the 4 Allen bolts. As you can see, I'm just screwing them down long ways to start with, till they're nipped up. And then when they get to the bottom, you can finally just tighten them up. If you want to alter the position of the handle, it will rotate back and forwards in this clamp, but you can sort that out to suit yourself. Just loosen the screws, get it where it feels most comfortable, and then retighten the screws afterwards. And that's the handle fitted. Okay, having assembled our head unit, we'll move that out of the way for the time being, and we'll move on to assembling the trimming head itself. Now the guard here needs a little trimming blade fitting, which trims the length of your trimming wire as it's going round. This is the little trimming blade, and it's got a little plastic sheath on it to stop you cutting yourself. Again, in the toolkit, you'll find 3 small self-tapping screws. Where can I put them? 3 small self-tapping screws, and again you're going to need the screwdriver with a cross head on it. Now then, on the inside of the guard, you'll see there's a little triangular piece with a notch, and it also has a little groove in the back. And again, this blade basically is going to sit on there like that. So as the string comes round, if it's too long, it's going to cut it off and it's not going to thrash your guard. So if you hold that in position with one finger, just put a screw through the hole. And start the screw. Then put a second screw in. Start the screw. It should stay there now. Third screw. Start him off. Okay, once you've got 3 screws in position, just hold the plate down and you can tighten these 3 screws all the way to the bottom. They are quite firm, but they do screw in quite easily. And as I said, screw them right down to the bottom. Okay, so that's the cutting blade. Now it is fairly sharp, so for this demonstration I'm going to leave the guard on, but obviously if you're using it, I mean that would soon wear away, but you could take that off. So I'll just keep it on there so I don't cut myself. Right, the next step is to fit the guard onto the trimming shaft. Got a little clamp plate here. It's got a little protrusion, a little like a half-sheared bobble in the centre of it. And what you will see in the lower end of your shaft is a hole, and that's going to locate there. So as you can see, it's going to sandwich between the two. So the simplest way to do this, you'll see there's 2 screw holes and you've got this plate. Again, in the toolkit, 2 long screws. If you just get those started in the holes, just get them started by hand first of all. There we are. Again, the 5mm Allen key. Let's just get these started. We leave them about, well, I don't know, 10mm from all the way down, I suppose, just as a starting point. Just so you haven't got all sorts of fiddly bits in your hand when you're putting it together and sliding it down over the end of the shaft, which I'll go through now. There we are, that'll do us. On the end of the lower shaft, you'll see there's a little transit plug. Remove this from the end. I mean, it is quite simple to get off. There we go, off it comes, a little rubber plug. Now this stops any debris and what have you going down into the spline shaft in the centre, so I do recommend you put it back on if, you know, whenever you split the unit. It just stops anything getting, you know, you getting any dirt on your shaft there. Okay, now then, with a rounded side facing away from the head, you can fit the guard straight down onto the shaft. When you get somewhere near the bottom, you'll see the dimple in here just drops in the hole. Once it's dropped in the hole, you can finish tightening the screws. Now it will try and jump out like mine just did there. Just put your thumb on the top while you're doing the screws just to keep it located, and it keeps everything in the right position and in the right orientation in relation to the strimming head. So this can be tightened up completely at this stage, because once it's on, it doesn't really need to move at all. Here we are. Final tighten up. And that's the guard fitted. This is the main nut that holds them on, it holds on the trimming blades. This actually screws on it. So it's a left-hand thread on here. So where you'd normally unscrew this way, anti-clockwise to take a nut off. As you look at it, you need to turn it clockwise. It's only very loose on there, and as you see, clockwise and off it comes. This is a protection plate to stop you grounding out the brush cutting blades. We don't need that with the strimming head. And this is the little clamp plate, which is also used with the brush cutter blade. We don't need these three items with the trimming head. Now then, if you take the 4mm Allen key, you'll notice in the side of this guard, that falls off by the way, there's a hole where an Allen key will pass through. It's quite useful the fact that it came off, and there's also a hole in here. Now then, if you pass, drop that back on, now that goes on cup side down, so where it's got a cup, that fits down onto the shaft, and it's the drive plate. Let's spin it round. As you pass your Allen key through the hole, you can rotate this, and the Allen key will pass right through the lot and lock this shaft in position. So that's basically locking the shaft. Again, to fit the strimmer head, it comes preloaded, as I said earlier. What you would normally do is turn it clockwise to do it up. Anti-clockwise, it's a left-hand thread. So anti-clockwise tightens it up. That's locking the shaft. That's all locked, and that's fitted in position. And that's the strimming head assembly, completely fitted. Okay. So again, to remove it, exact opposite. Allen key through the hole. Rotate until the Allen key goes through the inner hole as well, and that's now locked. Now then, clockwise to undo, and off it comes. Okay. What I'll do is I'll fit the 8-tooth head for you in the box. As you can see on the bottom, 8T, and there's a tick in it. The other one has a tick in a 3T, so you've got an 8-tooth and a 3-tooth wheel. I'll just show you this. It comes with a protective guard. It's not ridiculously sharp, but it just stops it getting bumped and knocked. And basically, it has 8 teeth. Okay, now to fit this, the writing, the Hyundai writing on the top, should face away from you as you fit it. So that's now facing away from me, and I've got the blank side up. Okay, now then, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put the plastic protection guard back on. That's probably the way I should recommend you do it, and then if you do slip with the spanner or what have you when you're doing the nuts up, you're not going to catch your fingers on one of the sharp edges. As I said, they're not that sharp. They don't need to be. So you'll see on the disc, on the drive disc, is a register or a raised portion. I've got the key in there locking the shaft, and that raised portion there fits just nicely on the hole in the disc. So as you can see, it'll sit there quite nicely, and we need to make sure that it is here when we finish assembling it. Next, we have a spacer washer. This has a hollow on the one side and a raised part on the other. The hollow faces the blade. Then we have this shiny disc, like a mushroom shape. This goes on with the hollow side down again, and that's to stop you banging the disc directly onto the floor. It just gives you that bit of margin. Again, left-hand thread on the nut. So to put it on, we need to screw it anti-clockwise. I'll get it in a moment. There we are. Right then. Now, I've still got my Allen key locking the shaft, and here we have what's a spark plug spanner, and it's also a spanner that fits this nut. It's got two separate ends. Right, so anti-clockwise. It's a nylock nut, so it is quite firm all the way down until it's tight. Now, just to make sure that we've got it on the register, we can have a look underneath just to make sure it's sat down, but a pretty surefire way is to give it a spin. And if it's wobbling around, you know, up and down in this plane, you know you've missed the register. Just loosen off, wiggle it about till it drops down, and then tighten the nut again. But that's absolutely fine. So that's how to fit the brush cutting blade. As I said, that's the 8-tooth brush cutting blade, and pretty much I'll show you it. Fairly obvious, that's the 3-tooth brush cutting blade. Okay, and it fits in exactly the same way as the 8-tooth. Right. And that's pretty much the assembly of the strimming head. Now what I can show you is how to fit the strimming head onto the upper part of the machine. Let's bring it into view for you. Oh dear. Okay, you'll see in the end of here is a transit plug again. Take it out every time you want to fit this, but plug it back in when not in use. So when you take out the shaft, plug the plug back in the end. Again, it stops anything going up and getting dirt inside the mechanism. So we'll put that to one side. Loosen off the clamping hand wheel, and you'll notice there's a little trigger on the top here. It does actually say push on it, but little trigger, and that's the lock mechanism. In the end of the shaft is a square hole. Basically, the peg on the end of this lock drops into the square hole. So if I insert the lower end into the top end, push the trigger, push it until it's right home. Now you can see that's not locked. If I rotate it so it's correct, click, a positive click. Do that again. That is in position. That's dropped into the hole. That's positive. Sometimes you can get it first time, so you push that down. That's already in. But if you misalign it, just rotate it till you hear the click, and that's in position. And then finally, tighten up the clamp wheel, and that's the 2 halves of the shaft aligned. Basically fully assembled. The only real thing you need to do for the rest of this now would be to fill it with fuel with a 2-stroke mixture, put your harness on, set it all up, line it all up so it suits yourself, and that's pretty much most of the assembly. Basically comes in 2 parts. You'll see a series of little turnbuckles on elongated tags, and pretty much the same, a series of elongated holes in the mask. So starting one end, you may find that they're already the wrong way round, so those 2 are now lined up. Pass them through the holes and turn the buckles. That one's fine. Again, that one's the wrong way round, just turn it round. That's good, that's good. Push them down over the top, then rotate 180 degrees. That's the 2 halves of the mask assembled together. Now the ear defenders do actually fit as a one-piece thing with the face mask, and they fit into these grooves here, which simply snap over the top and locate the ear defenders, and they will come around the outside of the head shield. So I'll do that for you now. Just pull the earphones to the bottom, around the outside. Now you'll see there's a little swaged area here, like a flat spot. That part goes up into that buckle, so you can get a close-up, and basically clicks into position and locks. Exactly the same with the other side. Start it in there, click, done. And that is the head shield, basically ready to go. And it does lift up and down as well. That's it. There is some adjustment on the back here where you can tighten and loosen it to suit yourself. I think the gloves are fairly self-explanatory. We'll leave that for now, I think. Right, the next thing to come to is the harness, and we'll go through the assembly and how to hook it on and what have you. Now, first of all, it has a breastplate here with a release catch, and this goes on the front. So, when I put the harness on, I'm expecting to bring it around my shoulders and then click this together. Following that, this part here with the straps hanging down would be the back plate. So this is going to go on the back of your shoulders. This is the breastplate, which is actually your attachment point for taking the harness on and off. So you can basically clicks together, you can pull that forward and it comes apart. Push it back together and it's fixed. So let's put the harness on. This part goes on the back of your shoulders. So you're looking for this part to come over the front, this part to come over the front. So you've got the two Hyundai soft padded parts hanging over here. Then, as I said, do up the breastplate again. That's your starting point. Now you will need to adjust this to suit yourself. I think I've already adjusted this one actually. Let's just show you the scenario. Oops. Right, now as you can see that would be way too big. It would fit a chap far bigger than me, and obviously it's designed to do so, but it will need adjusting to suit the individual. So I'll just adjust this to suit myself. Okay, so the ideal position for this breastplate would be somewhere around your sort of sternum area, right in the, just below your rib cage, right there in the centre. So that's perfect. Then adjust this. As you can see, it would be moving and slopping around. Again, pull the strap. Don't pull it so far as it offsets it across one way, but just enough to keep it in the centre. And the next adjustment would be to get this, the connection point sat around about your hip. So this is way too low. It's halfway down my leg here because I'm not a very tall chap. Let's have a look. A little bit more maybe. That's about ideal. So the machine weight will be sat on my hip. Now as you can see, there's bits of flaps of material, the spare stuff that I don't need being a small chap left over. I mean, these could be folded up, tied. You could take them in position, or if you're the only person going to be using it and it's pretty much your machine, nobody else is going to use it, you could sort of cut them off, melt the ends over so that it doesn't fray, and then take them in position, and pretty much you haven't got all these extra bits. But it does allow for the bigger chap, as it were. The next thing is to show you how to connect yourself to the machine. Now let's just bring this into view. This is the point at which the harness attaches. And you'll see that it's got this little clip. If you pull the red tag up, that clip will come away. Now you're pretty much going to have this connected to the machine at all times, and your quick release is simply by pushing that through there, dropping the red clip through the hole, and as you can see, I'm attached. It's not a very good position for me to show you, I haven't got a lot of room, but as you can see, I'm attached to the machine. To release yourself, you simply pull the red tag and you're out. So if you want to go and have a cup of tea, anything like that, you can put the machine down, quick, you're out of it, switch off, come back, connect up, start, away to go. As I said, connection, we'll go through the connection again. The little D-shaped link, through there, connect, and I'm in. And that's it, it's sort of hip level. You may find during use that you want to maybe bring it up a bit, maybe drop it down a bit, see what suits yourself. Now the position of this loop can be moved up and down the shaft. The purpose of this is, what you will find when you're hooked up, depending on which blade, whether you're using a strimming head or one of the brush cutting blades, it alters the weight of the machine. You can move this up and down the shaft to suit it so that it balances. And the ideal balance would be that if you let go, the head is just above the ground, the strimming head is just above the ground. If it automatically wants to swivel up in the air, move it back towards the engine. If it's down hard on the ground, move it away from the engine. Let me just show you. There's a screw here on the other side. I'll just disconnect the end so it's not quite so awkward in this small space. Right. As I said, there's a screw here. 4mm Allen key, the smaller of the two. Loosen the screw, and as you'll see now, when it's loose, this will now move up and down the shaft, and you can set it into whichever position you want. If you're right back this way, you'll be pushing hard on the ground. If you want to get it to just hover sort of 6 inches above the ground, keep moving this way until when it's sat on your hip, when you're not touching it, it just sits just above the ground and it's sort of well balanced but slightly downwards, as they say. Okay, once you've found that ideal position, you can lock the screw off again. And it will rotate, so you can sort of, with using the handles, turn it left and right to get in different areas of bank and what have you, and it'll rotate on your hip. So that's the position of the balance weight. Now in much the same way, if you've got very long arms and you're 6'4", I'm not a very tall chap, I haven't got very long arms, I'm going to want this handle closer to myself. This also slides up and down the shaft. Let me just show you. On the bottom side, 5mm Allen key, our 2 screws again. Loosen the 2 screws off. A couple of turns should do it. Again, this can be moved with a little bit of play. As you can see, it will move up and down the shaft to suit yourself. I haven't got them very loose, but there we go. As you can see, it's moving up and down. I haven't loosened them too much. There we are. So, once you find the ideal position, something that feels comfortable in your arms, you either mark the position, make a mental note of that distance, that sort of thing. Spin it back over, keeping it square to the top of the engine, so that this is all in one plane. You can then tighten the 2 screws up again on the bottom. As I said, keeping it square to the engine. Perhaps put my thumb on the top, hold it in position. Tighten up the clamp again. I'll show you that from that view. Tighten the clamp back up. Give it a good tighten at the end. And that's now in an ideal working position, would be for myself, as I set it for myself. Once you've found your final position, again, as I said earlier, your cable here, cable tie, your cable, one at the front there, round cable tie zip tied off, and one at the back. And you'll find that's absolutely perfect. I have these quite far back because I've got short arms, as I said, so I always end up with a spare bit of cable, but there's enough cable so that, you know, if you had really long arms and this were further up, there's enough cable for it to reach from the engine to the trigger. Yeah, and simply fit the cable ties to keep this all neat and tidy. That's pretty much the assembly of that done. Next thing I'm going to go through is the 2-stroke petrol. Now this is very important. I mean, if you were to run this on just clean unleaded petrol, this engine would seize up within a matter of, well, probably within a matter of minutes, but you know, an hour at the longest, because it would have no lubrication. Now it's a 2-stroke engine, it's a 52cc 2-stroke engine, and it runs on a mixture of 2-stroke oil and clean unleaded petrol. You need to mix the two together, and they both go into the fuel tank. We'll show you that in a moment. Now this is the mixing bottle. Now on this bottle there's a line and it says fuel. It holds approximately 1 litre, I think it is 1 litre of fuel. Fill it up with fresh unleaded petrol to that line. You can be as accurate as you like on that. Get it on a nice level surface, you know, and make sure that it's filled exactly to that line. Then if you add like the Morris lubricant that we recommend, which is the Ground Force 2 HSS 2-stroke oil, it's a semi-synthetic 2-stroke oil. If that were the case and you were adding that recommended oil, you'd only need 40-to-1 mixture. And you'll see on the bottle, in fact it's on this side, that there's a line here which says 40-to-1. So carefully add the 2-stroke oil until the fuel level rises up to the line where it says 40-to-1. And that will give you the correct ratio of 2-stroke oil to fuel. If you're using a sort of cheap, you know, 2-stroke oil that you can buy anywhere, you know, not the semi-synthetic ones, then you need to fill the mixture at 25-to-1 ratio. And again, there's a 25-to-1 ratio line. It's probably, you know, half as far again almost as the 40-to-1. But fill it up to this second line if you're using one of the cheaper 2-stroke oils to ensure that you've got enough oil in it. So the semi-synthetic ones would be 40-to-1 and the cheaper 2-stroke oils would be 25-to-1. Okay, so that's your 2-stroke. But this is vitally important. I mean, it absolutely has to have 2-stroke oil in the fuel at all times. So once you've mixed your 2-stroke fuel, next thing to do is add the fuel to the machine. Just take this harness off. Right. This is the fuel filler cap. And screws anti-clockwise as they normally would. Once you've filled your bottle, you've got your 2-stroke mixture. This fuel tank takes, I believe, it's around a litre anyway, I think it's just slightly less. Pour the fuel in, you know, to 3/4 full, not right up to it's coming out of the cap, but you know, somewhere around this sort of area here would be fine. And replace the cap. Be careful not to cross-thread the cap, it's quite easy to sort of put it on, and if it goes tight before it's gone all the way down, you've cross-threaded it. So just, you know, it should quite easily spin on, and then tighten it down quite firmly. Okay, so next we're going to go through the starting procedure. Having filled it with the correct mixture of two-stroke petrol, two-stroke oil and petrol as we went through earlier, the next thing we need to do is to prime it. Underneath the carburetor here you'll see that there is a priming bulb. 4 or 5 pushes, maybe 7 or 8 pushes on this, as you can see. You'll hear a little squeak. And what you'll see is fuel coming up the pipe. It's normally a coloured fuel anyway, so you'll see the fuel coming up the pipe and going back down through the return pipe when the carburetor is full. When you see it going back down through the return pipe, without major bubbles in it, that's pretty much enough, but sort of 7 or 8 times should be more than enough. So that's the priming. Next thing to do with a cold engine is to turn the choke on. Lever here is the choke. Up is choke on, down is choke off. So to start it from cold, we'd have choke on. If you've been running the engine and it's quite warm and you're only putting it down to go and have a cup of tea or whatever and you come back, you probably won't need choke. But when from a cold engine, up is choke on. So having primed it and the choke's on, we need to turn the actual engine on. We've got a switch here which is basically the on and off switch. Up is stop, down is on. Having done this, primed, choke on, switched on, pull start and the engine will start. Once the engine has started, allow it to run for 2-3 seconds and then gradually turn the choke off. If you turn the choke off too soon, it might stop. You might just stop the engine and you've got to repeat the procedure. But after 2 or 3 seconds, just turn the choke off and it should sit there idling nicely. We'll talk about the throttle itself now, which is like the accelerator in your car. It's got a safety lock, so you can't pull this throttle. This is the throttle unless you've got the safety lock pushed. So natural position it would be in your hand is there, so your safety lock is pushed and there's your throttle. So the more you pull back on the throttle, more gas goes through, faster the Strimmer head goes. So that would be full throttle and that is off. And that's pretty much the controls of the machine. When you want to stop the machine, basically let go of the throttle, it'll go back to tick over, let it tick over for a couple of seconds and simply turn it off on the switch. And again, to start it again, on the switch. If the engine's just been running, you only just stopped it, pull start, it'll start again, tick over and away to go when you're working again. So that's pretty much the operation of the engine and the way to run it. Again, I must stress again, 2-stroke oil, 40 to 1 for semi-synthetic oils, 25 to 1 for the cheaper oils. Yeah, that pretty much covers the sort of out-of-the-box demonstration, the operation and what have you of this machine. I mean, it's got great features. It's very comfortable on the hip. It takes all the weight. The PPE comes with it. Everything comes with it. It's got a really rugged sort of polypropylene type plastic guard on the back of here, which basically will take a lot of abuse and isn't going to wear through very quickly at all. It's got lubricated head on here with a grease nipple so that it can be lubricated again, will help the life of the machine. Everything's really sturdy. One of the great features is this quick lock, the split portion on the machine, which goes together really nicely. As you can see, that's the positive click and it's locked there. Tighten up the hand wheel, and that is pretty much solid fixed. It's not going to be moving around on here or anything like that. Again, another great feature, being able to move the handles up and down to suit yourself. I mean, it really is a quality bit of kit and should give you years of gardening. So, well, thank you very much for listening. I've been Adrian and happy gardening.